Or just chisel. Make my day, bunk. Alright, how about this? The Buck Hoodlum in front of the Nutnfancy camera again. I don't know about you, but that makes my day seeing those two knives on the reviewing table. You've had the unfortunate occurrence of clicking on yet another Nutnfancy knife addiction video. It's May 2012. On the top is the Ron Hood, legacy of Ron Hood, Buck Punk, testing complete here in TMP. On the bottom, tested last year, the massive 10-inch Buck Hoodlum.
4-foot log.
I love the Hoodlum. I absolutely love it. Watch my review on that, annotated right there at the top of the screen. Lots of great things to say about a 10-inch relatively lightweight survival knife. The complete carry package, I'm talking Hoodlum on the bottom, is 23 ounces, and for a 10-inch full flat ground blade, that's a good carry weight. Perhaps, just perhaps, that big knife philosophy does not apply to your systems. So here we go. We're going to talk about little brother, the Buck Punk, legacy of Ron Hood and Karen Hood. How you doing, Karen? We always have a great time when we go and see Karen at SHOT Show. We had a great booth review, 2012. You might want to reference that video too. On we go to all this stuff right here. Big blades, big blades, big blades. I have videos out on big blades. I am a fan. Now those are some survival knives. Each one is going to have, in my opinion and experience, very distinct capabilities up in them there woods.
Man, look at these long planks.
My experience, a large blade is preferred, even if you pair it up with, I don't know, the awesome Sawviver backpacking saw, or full-size saw, whatever you want to carry with it. Hatchets are great, axes are great. When I go backpacking, weight, size, SAWC is limited. Then I'm going to take me a big blade along. Perhaps I'm going to take a smaller blade. And now we get into the POU of the Buck Punk. And that is going to be a smaller survival knife and or camp knife. Because its 5.6 inch long blade will be ideal for the latter tasks. How about survival? It just depends on who you are and what your approach is and what you intend to do with it. We see, heck, on television all the time, guys working with these tiny little blades and raving about how awesome they are. To me, it just creates a lot of work for me. I've talked about it for hours and hours here in the Nutnfancy project ever since 2008. I'm a fan of a bigger blade for splitting wood, getting to that interior dry wood, kind of like the Hoodlum. One of my top recommended large survival knives, still in 2012. But it is heavy, 23 ounces. If I'm going backpacking deep in, this is probably too big to come along. Not probably, it is. I just can't take it. It's too much. That's where the Buck Punk comes into play. Along with that, we're going to accept perhaps some diminished capabilities, at least in terms of the span we can do for the log. Batoning, it's not a very big blade. Let's not kid ourselves here. And then it can't hack worth a crap. It's just too light. The blade itself is only 7.8 ounces, which is mostly a good thing. Especially when we're talking about carrying it, using it in camp tasks. and some other things, that weight's excellent. The total carry package is 13.2 ounces with the sheath. Now, if we're going to be honest, we can also say that this knife didn't hack exceptionally well either. It can't, it just doesn't have the mass. It's, you know, a relatively thick blade, but it has some hollowed out sections in the handle. Here we go again, firepower versus mobility. Pick your poison. Now, what's important to you? Well, we're going to say in this philosophy of use, weight and size are important to us, and we just can't take the bigger blades. We can't take an axe either, so maybe it's the buck punk that comes along for the ride, and in that case, it can function as a survival knife. So that's the first POU, a smaller survival knife. Next one, mentioned already, camp knife. So kind of along the same lines as one we would food prep with, we would make kindling with, we'd split logs with. And that's right, I said logs, not just sticks. In testing here in the Nutnfancy project, the punk is completely capable of taking a pounding, just like Big Brother was. We thumped on that thing hard. Passed with flying colors. So did the punk. It went on Llama Trek with us. And to really condense the testing down, I decided to cut in half with the buck punk with my crew members a log. Not just any log, but an oak log. Very dense oak log. So I just hammered it through. It took a long time to do, by the way. Pound, 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 pound. I'm not going to say a big blade would have been any better, and nor do I think this is a, honestly, realistic use of the blade. It's a test, that's all. Testing the edge, seeing if we can roll the edge. It's made out of 5160 spring steel, which has honestly become one of my favorite outdoor steels. For that matter, even sword steels, 5160. It's just tough. And so is the punk, hammering it through that log, no failures at all. And while we're here, let's check out the edge. This is after hammering it through an oak log, y'all. Check it. Little grab right there. More there. Haven't touched it up at all. So yeah, passed with flying colors as a camp knife. Absolutely fire preparation tool. As long as you can span it, it can do it. How about tactical philosophy of use? Yeah, definitely. Wait, maybe not definitely. Because on the thumb ramp, it does lack, you know it, not even going to say it. There's not a lot of traction up there. I put some skateboard tape up there. Hey, Buck, put some jimping on there. Karen, put some jimping on it. I think it would be welcomed. Now, granted, I think the primary calling for this knife is out in the woods. But perhaps, just perhaps, it may find its way onto some soldiers out there serving in harm's way, especially since it's so light. Collectible? I don't know. Maybe. It's a cool knife, I'll tell you this. I enjoy handling it, but to me it's a tool. Mostly a tool. The buck punk. Talked about the weight. How about the balance and feel of the buck punk? Well, we saw it at SHOT with Ron Hood in the SHOT video 2011, and we opened it up, and there's hollowed out sections in this full tang knife, both in the hoodlum and in the punk. That makes it very lightweight. Great job, Ron. He calls it the shock mitigation system. I think we could probably say that is arguable, how much and to what degree that works. In other words, does it prevent the transmission of vibration to the hand when you're chopping with it? But again, for me, and what I would do with this knife and what I have done with it, this really isn't a chopping knife. It just doesn't have the mass and the weight to be effective at that task. The good news is the feel is improved. It's very balanced. If anything, maybe just a little bit blade heavy. Lightweight, very fast in hand. Getting back to tactical philosophy of use. A beautiful Bowie clip blade shape. I love it still. Flat ground, thank you very much. And it has, actually can't speak, it actually has a very perfect relief edge. Primary bevel right there. Perfect. That is powder coated, and you can see it wears off with some hard use. Just makes your blade look cooler. I like it. I like the gray theme that goes on the hoodlum and the punk. They're just good looking blades. I can fault this knife not at all for its width, sharpness, tip strength, and the full flat grind. Just like I said with the hoodlum, it is outstanding. And again, 5160 steel, it is a favorite. Along with 1095, we're talking about carbon steels that we're willing to perhaps accept some rust on in high humidity environments, which if you live there, you will rust this if you're out in the snow and the rain. We had good weather on Llama Trek and other subsequent testing, so I didn't really rust it. I took care of it. I'm usually wiping WD-40 on the exposed edge out in the woods, and then when I get back, rim oil comes on. If and when I take all the sap and other gunk off it, that takes it to the handle. Criticism. Uh-oh. How can you criticize the punk? Well, because I am an objective reviewer, if nothing else. The handle scales are too sharp, Karen. Sorry, they just are. I actually took these off and slapped them on the old belt sander. Wait, it wasn't a belt sander. It was a third sheet vibration sander is all. I used medium grit 220 sandpaper, I think, and just worked over these edges right here. They're just kind of obnoxious to me. The good news is it carries so well, the Buck Punk does. And part of that equation is the very thin handle right through here. So this dimension is comfortable and carry in hand. You may say, well, it's not very hand filling, and you might feel those sharp corners, especially without a glove. If we compare it against Big Brother, here we go, the Buck Hoodlum, you can see here we have a lot more thickness and more comfort in use. This is an attribute I want my wilderness blades to have because I might just be using it hour after hour. Just talk to them, they're bushcrafters. They'll tell you. Maybe if we would expand this handle just ever so slightly, maybe another 1/8 of an inch, and round it more, I would dig it just a little bit better. That being said, as it comes out of box, if you just spend a little bit of time sanding it, if, like me, you find the sharp transitions here a little bit obnoxious, you'll love it. Full tang, obviously, there's a big old lanyard hole right there, and getting back to the tactical POU, how would you like to get smacked in the thigh with that thing? Non-lethal impact. I wouldn't. The handle is big enough that it could happen. I have large size hands once again, and we see 2 finger choils right here. We have one forward of the guard and then aft of the guard, and they do lock in the hand nicely. See how this is actually ready to rock and roll in a tactical philosophy of use? Totally. So the guard is on the bottom here, just like I said, and you got a thumb ramp, so you can really lock into the punk. That takes it to the sheath. Well, me and Ronnie, way back before we lost Ronnie, how you doing, buddy? If you're watching this review, we raved about this sheath. I love it. It is a MOLLE compatible sheath, getting back to soldier philosophy of use, perhaps. That means you can weave it into your LBE. Perfect. Wait, you're not a soldier? Don't worry. Standard belt loop right there. And look at how I've got this one fixed, by the way. There is a Velcro retention tab, and you can weave it under this nylon thing right here. And that way it really locks it in so it doesn't peel off your belt. So you can carry it conventionally or not. Now, unlike the hoodlum, and this is not a miss, it's a good thing, it doesn't have extra real estate here where you can configure it in different ways. The sheath is excellent. Not super light because it has a heavy-duty plastic liner in it. And a minor hit is that it doesn't friction hold the Buck Punk. So be careful with that. It can drop out of the sheath upside down. You could grasp it, cut yourself. Now this, dudes, is how you do a retention strap well done buck. Notice the blackened snap. Just like so. No Velcro there to wear out, get packed with snow, weeds, I don't know, ravioli, whatever you got going there. Extra pouch on the exterior to carry all kinds of things that you probably don't need to carry there. Knives, multi-tools, you might, I don't know. I usually leave that empty. I would kind of like to see just a very Spartan sheath. Plastic would be my favorite, kind of like the Conceal X that Cold Steel does. They're so lightweight, they don't retain water, which this one will. until it dries out. It's made of ballistic nylon, so it's not going to retain the water for long, but you might be hiking, kind of like we do here in TMP. It'll soak up with water, and for the time being, you're going to be carrying it. There's an extra 550 cord retention. I find this kind of gets in the way, and you might cut it extracting and putting the knife in and out. But the upsides are it is not, more or less waterproof is what I should say. Relatively lightweight, pretty durable, MOLLE compatible. That's the sheath. By the way, that one's made overseas, I think. The sheath is. Where do they make that? I'm looking. Oh, secrets revealed. China. Okay? But that doesn't mean quality is lacking at all in the punk. In fact, just the opposite. It has superior quality to a lot of other blades that I've looked at. Now, if it's an HOF blade here in the Nutnfancy project, that stands, by the way, for Hall of Fame knife. All of those blades have smoking quality, otherwise they're not HOF. And I'm going to show you some right now. Let me throw out a price on this knife. Look in the upper right now, that's the cheapest price I can get you for this blade. And they've been serving the Nutnfancy project faithfully for years now. Great association. Go there. If you dig the punk, which I do, that's a great place to find it. Here comes first competitive option, the Cold Steel Leatherneck. 15.6 ounces, SK5 steel. They're changing it to, I was going to say crappy. I shouldn't say that. 4116 Krupp is not that crappy, but for the philosophy of use as a wilderness blade, I don't prefer it. And they're also in the 2012 version getting rid of this, the flat ground. I can't speak, the flat grind. This is really, in a way, kind of a different knife because it's heavier. The Cold Steel Leatherneck is 15.6 ounces, and it's about half the price, though. Overseas produced, the blade is. The blade itself is made in the U.S., by the way. There we go again, China versus U.S. Those are going to be your pricing differences throughout the knife market, no matter which one. Still love the Leatherneck, though, the SF. At least the flat ground SK5 version. Heavier, a little bit bigger blade. Same philosophies of use, pretty much. Next up, oh, dudes, these are serious Hall of Famers here in the Nutnfancy project. I can't hold back on them. The Ontario Gen 2s. That's SP46. And this is going to be, make sure I'm telling you right. Now, this is SP43. So it's going to be heavier and a lot bigger blade. But not much heavier, about 2.5 ounces. About $65 is what these. Also, 5160 steel flat ground blades will run you, and they are outstanding wilderness blades. They thump as well as the Hoodlum and the Punk, in my experience. Dan Maragni did a number on these knives, and I mean in a good way. Here's one that's perhaps a little bit more closely matched in size and weight, and that is the Ontario SP42 at 7 inches. 14.2 ounces in carry weight. That's a bigger blade, dudes, right there. And honestly, and I got to be honest in my reviews, it's a more comfortable handle, albeit it's not a special or cool. It's Craton. It's tough, rugged, depending on what you're doing with it. Maybe over time it's going to fall off. You may have to rewind your tang. These are full tangers too. 5160 steel, leaf-shaped blade, FFG. Love the Gen 2s. That SP42 is a great backpacking blade. As you can see, it's gone here in TMP. And the smaller ones as well. Next up, how about the SOG Force? Oh, 15.4 ounces. So that kind of places it perhaps in a different category just because it's 2 ounces heavier. But Nutnfancy, what's 2 ounces? Well, in backpacking, it's the world. With that attitude, you're going to end up with a pack that weighs 115 pounds. But Nutnfancy, you want to talk, your packs weigh 80 pounds. I know. I'm trying to get them down. If I could be happy with a 60-pound pack, it'd be like a vacation. If I could just do that. Anyways, this is an OS 8 blade. Not full flat ground, but it performed marvelously in my testing. You see the size differences there. So this is a stainless outdoor survival tactical blade, partially serrated. Again, I like the PEs better. This one's hollow ground. Has a really strong spine to it, and it split amazingly. That's a SOG Force. What else I got on the table? Probably more than I have time for. I think I'm just going to call it right there. two kinds of cool we're talking about this knife. Well, one, here it comes. And this is, I'm dead serious when I say this. This is the legacy of a great man. The legacy of a great outdoorsman. A wilderness adventurer. The whole Hood family is that way. Karen, Ron's that way. Ron's son's that way. These are good people. They're wilderness people. And that makes the punk cool, in my estimation. And this is a very capable knife in the philosophies of use that I've designated. Proven here in TMP. The steel is amazing. The edge, as I've shown you, is amazing. The Buck 5160 is as good as any 5160 I've ever seen, ever. It's got excellent ergonomics. Yes, I wish it was, I'll go ahead and say it, jimped. And the handle slabs were rounded. But those are minor criticisms on otherwise a pretty perfect blade from the Buck and Hood family. That's a Nutnfancy review. See ya.